welcome everybody. My name is Pastor Stephanie Haskins. I'm the pastor of Niantic Community Church, where no matter who you are and no matter where you are on your life's journey, you're welcome here. And I am joined today for another segment of our Resilience series by Verna Swann, a longtime member of this community. And it's my pleasure and joy to welcome her to this time, and so excited for our conversation today. The Resilience series has been really incredible, actually. And we've heard from a lot of different folks about their struggles and challenges, but also just, I feel like we've just experienced the beauty of all the souls in our midst. And one of the most beautiful and graceful is Verna. So I'm really thrilled to be talking with her today. So I'm going to ask my first question, Verna, and welcome you to this conversation by asking you how you first got connected with Niantic Community Church.
Well, back in the early 70s, actually, was my first connection. And it was actually not through somebody inviting me there, but it was actually through my children. They were Sunday school age when we moved to Niantic. And we lived in the same neighborhood with Ellen Ashburn, who everyone knows at church. And fortunately or unfortunately, I only had one Sunday in 7 off. So I would have to work 6 Sundays, 6 weekends in a row, and then I would have a weekend off. And I was very, very involved in Shiloh Baptist Church. I was the president of the choir, the gospel choir, and had been a member there since moving to Connecticut as a child. So that one Sunday, I certainly wanted to be there. But Ellen, in all her wisdom, they would invite my kids to go to Sunday school with her kids at Niantic Community. So she would bring Katrina and Kevin to Sunday school with her kids every Sunday. And then Katrina, a beautiful voice. So she was in the choir. So Ellen would take her, because I was working and my husband was working. So Ellen would bring my children, she introduced them to Niantic Community Church. So soon after, and they fell in love with it. Of course, a lot of their friends that they saw from school, so they were in their element. And so then, of course, they would want me to come with them my one Sunday. And so, I put off and I jokingly said to them one time, there's nobody that looked like me at that church. They don't even know how to sing gospel. So why would I want to go there? But they insisted, oh, Mom, you'll love it. You will love it. And so I broke down, and this one Sunday I said, okay, I'm going to go to Niantic Community Church with them. And I tell you, it was like, I think of the Russian wind of the Spirit, it was like when I walked in the door, the warm welcome, and then I was pleasantly surprised because a little did I know that Niantic Community Church had connection with the prison. So every second Sunday of the month, the gospel choir from the inmates who sang would sing at Niantic Community Church. So it just so happened to be that Sunday. And so I was like, wow, they do have people of color here. They have Black people here. So it just took me that one Sunday to realize that it's not about the color of the people or anything else. It's about the Spirit of God being, and that's what you want. Uh, and so that was a real life exchange, a changing experience for me, to make that transition from what I knew from a child sitting on the bench at the Methodist Church in North Carolina to the similar at Shiloh, to a whole different, but actually the same. That's when I started to realize that, is people are the same no matter what. Uh, they have likes and dislikes. It does not matter. It's the spirit that's there and what you're willing to put into it as well. So that's how I became connected with NCC. And as life moved on, I was able, as I put in more years at the hospital, then I was able to have every weekend off. So that became a real joy for me. But my real connection was Ellen Ashburn and her children, just wanting to show my kids that they were loved as the same as anyone else, and including them into a faith journey that they loved as well, because they both went right through confirmation, and like a lot of kids after high school didn't return, but that was a big part of their life right through uh, the 70s and 80s.
That's incredible. And I knew some of that story, but didn't know all of it.
Yes.
That's really, really neat. And Ellen Ashburn, yes, such an important person in our midst, as well. Thank you for that. And I guess my next question kind of follows from what you just said, which is, I didn't realize that you had some reservations coming because, Niantic is a predominantly like white town. Our church still is predominantly white. And I wonder if you could reflect a little bit about what might be one of the most challenging aspects of being a person of color in an overwhelmingly white place, either Niantic Community Church or the town of East Lyme or Southeast Connecticut. So I'd be curious to hear what you say.
Well, I think because leaving the South, where, I went to segregated school to 8th grade. So I think all the shock of just having been in that environment, that all was over and done with by the time that I moved to Niantic, because yes, I was educated in New London. Okay. And the high school there was predominantly white. Okay. So and had my circle of both friends. Our neighborhood that I lived in from when we came to North Carolina was hugely mixed. We had Jewish, we had Italian. The first person that, when we came, school had already started. We came in September and they were already in school. The person, Italian family across the street, she immediately came and wanted to be the one for me to walk to school with her. Now, even though there was 3 other Black girls that were my age in the neighborhood, and so once we got settled, and my mom and my dad explained, this is the neighborhood, this how, because we didn't live next door to whites or anything like that. So just settling into that, and then going to the high school. So by the time that I was introduced to East Lyme, then that was all, I was working at the hospital. The position that I had at the hospital, any of the positions were maybe two Black people, secretaries. There were two others when I went there. Okay, most of any Black person, you either worked in food service or housekeeping. Okay, so by then, when we moved to Niantic, my mom was already here. My mom was here in the 60s, which was she was probably one of the first Blacks to move to Niantic. Um, and that's the reason that my husband and I decided to move to Niantic, is because we wanted to be closer to her. My dad died when he was 52 years old, so she was here by herself, and we wanted to be closer near her. So that's the reason that we started seeking housing in Niantic. So by the time that I really got to Niantic Community Church, that wasn't a real issue for me. Um, I do think that it was an issue for some whites, but being that the job that I had at the hospital, basically, uh, especially the last job that I had at the hospital in advocating, most of the clients were white. Okay, so it's really been like that's the life, and from youth, my parents always they didn't talk about Black, white. It was always the focus on you getting an education so that you can get a good job when you get out of high school. There was um, not a lot of talk about even going to college, but it was about preparing yourself so that you can support yourself in life. And for me and my siblings, I think that we were focused on get to be 18 so you can get a job so that you can help your parents, because they didn't have very much and they worked very hard, really hard, 2, 3 jobs to just make ends meet and to put food on the table for 5 kids, for 7 people. So the it was never really a real like hardship for me to settle in, to being in a different, like the difference from living in New London to living in Niantic. It was really never a big issue because I kept going back to New London. Okay. Now my kids probably they would have a very different take because they were children and they grew up here where they did not have that same that I had. I had the Black environment when I lived in New London till I was an adult. So they don't have that. So for me, how is it being in a basically white environment? That's the world. Let's face it, that's the world for us, for many of us. Uh, so, I just live it as the faith that I was taught from the time that you can understand anything. Um, I live it as God's people, no matter, because I don't believe that you're you're blessed by your color, by anything, by your richness. I think you're blessed because you have the faith and you believe. And I really do. That's my faith. And whenever I encounter, or if I'm thinking, or if I feel um, that I'm not being treated a certain way because of only my color, not my character or what I stand for. Um, um, I try to speak out and have and try to help people to understand what it is that this is how I see the situation. And maybe, maybe they don't understand, or they've not had experience in dealing with, with people of any other culture or race. So I try not to take negatively whenever I encounter a situation. I don't encounter them for uh, black, white. I try to understand why that person is feeling or doing the things that they are doing that is offensive to me, and help them to understand why, you know. And it's almost like having, like, you're a Democrat and you have a Republican friend. It's life is not perfect. So I try not to set myself up for, oh, okay, every person that you encounter is going to like what you do, like what you say, or appreciate you. So I just, I try to move on from that into something, and try to think something positive, move in a positive manner. I feel like I can't change someone's heart. That's up to them to change their heart. But I can leave an impression that I am the same human that you are. Okay. So for me to be in Nina Community Church, um, I don't, I'm like this one person who, a long time ago, someone asked them if they knew me. Uh, a person that worked at the hospital say, I asked this person at Nina Community Church if they knew you, and they could not. The name didn't ring a bell to them, and so forth. So she said, well, I didn't want to say she's probably one of the maybe the only Black person that you have there, but she said, finally I did say that. And she's like, really? And then the person remembered. She said, oh yeah, she's that person that ushers a lot. And she said, I didn't think about that she was Black. So that's how I try to live my life, is that this person was really, she had her way of remembering who I was rather than remembering my color. Okay. So, but it's has, I've had some blips, and an occasion for one experience that I had when when I was greeting, and there's a particular, and these people are no longer there, but they completely refused. They would always walk around to avoid me greeting them, or in particular, never to touch them. So, but I said, it's their loss. That's the way I look at it. It's your loss, and so, but I just try to be aware, and try to respect people's distances, and hope that they would do the same for me.
Oh, Verna, this is already so rich. And I'm so looking forward to people watching this. Well, in the spirit of learning, and in the spirit, because we've had conversations about race before, about white privilege, and the church has been some folks in the church have been on something of a journey with white privilege. And so I was I was wondering, from your perspective, from your rich experiences, and just you are itself a fount of wisdom about all kinds of things. But I wonder if you could erase or ameliorate one of the blind spots that white folks tend to have about people of color. What would that be? What's a blind spot that if collectively or individually or however we're doing the work of white privilege as white people, what is one blind spot that you wish you could just like rub away with a magic eraser?
This one is really going to sound really, it's very it's going to be funny to you, but the one thing, and I've experienced this as well, is that when a Black person is late, it's a stigma. When a white person is late, there's an excuse. It's like, I'm late because of my color. It doesn't have anything to do with that. And let me tell you, I was chuckling, Stephanie, when at 11 o'clock on the dot, you weren't here, you hadn't signed in. I was like, okay. So I'm laughing because it's so funny how we, and you know, that's not all white people's fault that is a saying, because, you know, our race says, you know, we have that little saying about each other too. You're on CP time, you know, but I think about the culture again. That's it's a culture. What is time to in the different cultures? Because, you know, if you look at my Latino friend, you know, when she goes home to Puerto Rico and stuff, you know, or, you know, in other countries, you know, you have a siesta. You're just, you know, I mean, there's a time break that you're not doing anything, you know, and that's the other thing. Time is very different in the culture, in different cultures, and I think one of the things as I look back about that is that, you know, our forefathers, you know, they didn't walk around with a gold watch on to look at what time. As a matter of fact, you know, if you look back, they would have to tell. My father used to say, "Oh, the sun is over here, so it's noontime." Okay, so that's one thing that kind of irritates me when, you know, if because I do try to be on time, but sometimes it just does not happen. But it has nothing to do because I'm Black. And I really wish they would erase that and to say, and I used to in my career, whenever I was dealing with people, I tried to really understand the different cultures, and, you know, whenever they had a concern of what it meant to them, and why they saw a negative piece about what was happening with them. So, but that's one thing that really kind of gets under my craw, is that, you know, it's because you don't know what's going on in people's lives, and you know, 1 minute is not as important to someone as it is to someone else, you know, and who set that standard. Okay, so if I set my standard, it's negative. If if you set the standard, then it's okay, it's a positive, you know.
That is not what I thought you were going to say. And I don't know whether to apologize or not apologize for the
No.
fact that I was a few minutes late.
No,
Am I
I just
betraying my
thought
German ancestors if I'm late?
listen, I just thought it was that just, you know, and it's in the scheme of the world, that's, you know, that is really minute, but just think, if you are judged by something as simple as that because of your color, just imagine all the other things that can that's a stigma for you, you
Well, and
know.
so, you're pointing out something that's so profound here, which is that the dominant culture sets the tone and
Right.
gets to set the norms and the standards, right? And I just mentioned my German ancestors, but you know, German culture, white culture, set standards about time, right? That other cultures have different perspectives on time, right?
Exactly.
And so I get to be late as one person because that's part of my whatever.
Hmm.
That gets ascribed to just me and my
Right.
quirkiness or my disrespectfulness or whatever it is.
Hmm.
Whereas I get to be taken as an individual, whereas you get to be blanketed. You get to there's just always something else, right? There's always that aspect of race that's there.
Hmm.
Um, absolutely, and that's the way biases work, right? That
Exactly.
in truth we are all shaped by cultures, race, by caste, by all these different things, and yet we're still these like unique butterfly souls, right? In
Right.
our as God sees us, right? But all these other factors come into play because we're in human culture that's built around power structures and history and all those kinds of things. That is really profound. um, and I've noticed in this is pre-pandemic, of course, but when we have our gospel choirs, leading us in worship, there is this like time out of time, right? This timelessness. And I feel like one of the gifts when I've been in spaces that have included Black voices and Black witness and Black worship, that we go into kairos very easily. And kairos is like God time, right?
Right.
It's not like, okay, well, we got to end on the dot.
Right.
Or, the song said it was 5 minutes, so it's got to be 5 minutes because we got to go on. It's just like, you talked about the Holy Spirit at the beginning of our conversation about just like this blast of Holy Spirit. And I think that's a gift. Those are gifts that the Black church in particular brings to the church universal. um, well, I just could talk to you all day and listen to you all day. But you've alluded to this, but I really wanted to have you speak to it directly because I think you're one of our wise elders. Um, and I mean elder in the most respectful and not I don't have there's no negative connotation to that. Like
I
we have
understand.
elders and you are one of them, most definitely, and you're one of the most stylish people I know, and and everything about you is just kind of zingy, and wonderful. So I'm wondering, for those who will be watching this, who may or may not be part of our community, but who might just be finding us on YouTube, um, how does your faith, as you practice it and live it, because you are someone who lives faith, how does your faith help you to be resilient?
Well, it really it keeps me balanced, and it keeps me moving forward in the most difficult, dark times. Um, I feel so, and get a little emotional. I feel so blessed um, to be born where I was born and to have the upbringing that I had, the kind of parents that I had. It was, just like anything else, uh, experiences that were not so good, but living through and knowing almost like a, I call it a step above slavery. Um, the that foundation of where I was born, raised, and then now to Connecticut, and how that life has moved forward to where I am now is like I just say I could not count the blessings, and I feel like I've only gotten to where I am only through the faith and the grace of God. Um, I would not be here if it was not for that faith. Um, and uh, even like the resilience, I think, is even when things are not, don't feel good, tough. I mean, we had a hugely tough 4 years, of sometimes feeling like, uh, again, that civil rights meant nothing. Like we are taking a step back to where it's okay to abuse and use and just but then I look around me, and that's why I can feel so comfortable in the Niantic community fold, is that I know and I truly feel that even at the toughest time, when when others are their faith is being tested as well, that we're there for each other. It doesn't matter. I know that there are people that I can pick up the phone or I can just text and say, I need you, and their car ride away, or say, meet me here. I feel like I have to keep that, because that's what life is about. That's what following Christ is about. If I'm going to be a Christian, um, I may not be able to recite the Bible and so forth, but I know the ultimate goal of what the Christian walk is about. And so if I don't have that faith, then that's when things really fall apart for you, because when things fall apart, you have to have something to help you to put back together. And so that's how I live every day. When I get up, I try not to plan too far ahead of time, because and my mom used to say all the time, your plan is not God's plan. Whenever we were complaining about, I had this all planned for today, and she would say that, and she would and she would say it, and she wouldn't say it like a negative tone. She would always say it in that sweet voice. I wish you could have met my mom. The people at NCC that know her sweet voice, she would say, your plan is not God's plan, and then it would bounce you back to, okay, that's why, I brought you up, and to learn to keep your faith, and to not ever give up. There's always another turn. And if you listen carefully enough, she said, and God would tell you when that turn is, when you're to make that turn or go around a curve. you know she said, and he's always there. She said, even when you are at your lowest and you think that he isn't, he's there with you. And if you just keep the faith, then you can move through that too, and come out the other end being grateful. That's how I live my life.
There, there are people you encounter in your life where you really understand and experience that they walk the talk. And I think that I've been in Bible studies with you. I think you know the Bible pretty well. But
I'm
more
trying.
importantly, the point of faith is to walk it, is to live it. And I love that you talked about your sweet mother, and I would have loved to have met her. And I think I see you as taking your place in the long line of elders, and I don't use this word lightly, but saints, all the saints in light. So I want to thank you, Verna, for our conversation today. And I look forward to hearing all the comments from folks who will receive your wisdom, and who will, like your mom, know that our ways and God's ways aren't always the same thing, and our plans aren't always the same as God's. But God is guiding us around every corner and every bend and every challenge, and is leading us on to something better. Something I like to think about often is, if not this, then there's something better.
It's something
And I
better.
really think that that's the way God operates. And I thank you so much for our conversation today.
Definitely. I do have, not to interrupt, I do have just one question that I would like to submit to you, because I can certainly express and feel what I experience from a Black's perspective, but have you, is there someone that you can speak to say, okay, what is it like for you to be in fellowship with a Black person? I've not heard any any discussion about that. So sometimes think about that. That would be something that would be very helpful to me to see from the other side. With what are you seeing? You know, um,
It'd be lovely to get you and Ellen in conversation together, because you
yes,
have this long history, this long and rich history, but also, she's been working on justice issues for a long
for
time.
a long time.
A long time, and she'd be it really would be interesting to have you two in the same room, physically or in the same Zoom room, and to have a conversation about that, because um I think that, like all of these things, I don't think we always realize the bubbles that we exist in
Hmm.
until we run up against other bubbles.
Right.
And I myself, I mean, I grew up in this Midwestern city. Iowa is still vastly white as a state. And I see now that I grew up in a segregated city. I thought that segregated cities only existed in the South.
Right.
Um, right. But I grew
Right.
up, there was a place where the Black folks lived in my town. And it's not that it was utterly, segregated, but it was largely segregated. And so I just think we don't realize the bubbles that we exist in, politically, racially,
Mhm.
culturally, ethnically, in all the ways. And so, but I also think that God calls us out of our bubbles,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Calls us out of our bubbles. And because if we're staying in our bubbles, then we're missing so much of the abundant life that Christ wants for us. And we miss so many opportunities to love our neighbors as ourselves when we're just staying in our little bubbles. So thank you for that
Yes.
suggestion. And it's giving me an idea. But I'm going to say thank you for now. I'm going to just say my gratitude is so large. So
I
thank you,
thank you
Verna
too.
Swann. Thank you.